Good morning, Mark South, HurricaneTrack.com here with your Hurricane Pro and HD video blog for September the 1st, 2017. Throat sounds a little raspy this morning, forgive me. A lot of traveling, a lot of talking, not much rest. I guess these things will happen. So let's jump in and see what's going on here with Irma. Obviously Harvey, a remnant low, it's a tropical depression over Tennessee, and there will be a little bit of a tornado threat and some maybe periods of heavy rain throughout this region today overall. And just, basically you need to keep aware of the Weather Service forecast with NOAA weather radio or your smartphone. Make sure the alerts are on in case there is the potential of a storm developing from some of these lines. I'm going to show you that real quick. That's what this looks like on radar. You see one right here cutting through extreme western North Carolina, then through metro Atlanta, and this energy is going to translate off here to the east and northeast with time today, and this region through here under the gun for a low threat of tornadoes, but those that do form could be rather violent like we saw yesterday in portions of Alabama. Alright, so going back to the map here, the latest on Irma, this was as of the 5 a.m. Eastern Time advisory. Still a major hurricane, still way out in the open Atlantic, and still moving generally west with time. And it looks like the key here is going to be this supposed dip that's coming up to the southwest, and then how it recovers from that, and how much of a dip that is, how much latitude this thing loses in terms of any potential impacts to the islands over here, and then of course downstream from there, Bahamas, Greater Antilles, maybe Florida. We just don't know. It's so early in the game, and with modeling going out, my goodness, 2 weeks into the future, we can look at all kinds of possibilities. But this is a very delicate game of chess with the atmosphere, and it's going to be difficult, if not impossible, to know with any degree of accuracy where Irma could end up from this point on. I mean, we're talking September 1st, and it's probably at least 10 days away from this zone through here. If we just drew a line and said, when would it cross that line? At least 10 days, I would think. 8, 9, 10 days out, that's a long time when you're trying to forecast the weather. Looking at the satellite loop of it, it's gaining more convection and more banding, and it's going to go through fluctuations, but it looks like once it does that southwest dive somewhere in here, basically, let me just draw this in yellow, somewhere in this zone, as it recovers from that dive, water temperatures are going to increase, and I can show you that here, not only at the surface, but below the surface, the upper ocean heat content at about hour 60 through 72, and then everything beyond that, more energy is going to be available for this to tap into, and it would not surprise me at all to see this turn into a Category 5 off and on as eye wall replacement cycles come and go, and it fluctuates with its own structure and just chugs along. But the water temperatures, it's a Category 3 now, and it's going to just be moving towards warmer and warmer water temperatures over time. So just keep that in mind. There's just not that much more to add. The next several days, we could look at models, we could look at all kinds of ensemble members, and there's really just not a lot to add. But I do want to show one important thing here, and that's at the end of the period. If you want to kind of understand what to look for in the overall pattern versus the details of where Irma will be, then let's look at the GFS here, and this is the 0Z run from last night. So this is the overnight run of the GFS model, and this is 168 hours out. This is a week out, and you can clearly see this is Irma right here in the 500 millibar field, about midway up in the atmosphere. This is a very large, thick area of high pressure, the Bermuda High, if you will, the Western Atlantic Ridge, whatever you want to call it. And this is the remains of this trough that's going to be digging in over the next few days, actually quite deep. And then this feature right here is, I think, a big key. And so instead of looking at where Irma is, just try to ignore this. I know that's hard to do. Pretend that that's not even there. And look at the rest of what we have here in front of us. This feature right here, to me, is very important. It's the trough, this energy right here, lifting out and splitting off and leaving this piece of upper level energy behind, and that allows eventually Irma to come into the mid-Atlantic states, if you go and look at this out into the future. But we're not going to do that because that's so far out in time that the details, again, are so sketchy. I want to focus on these larger puzzle pieces, and I want to see in the coming days, is this going to be there? And does this trough here lift out to the north here and take this energy with it, allowing the ridging to build back in better or not? And those are the bigger puzzle pieces. And if those are all favorable for a landfall along the east coast of the U.S., or, this could still slip in under and go into the Gulf. It's not as likely any longer, but it's still so far out. We have to remember, we saw this with Matthew, that there was a time when the models were taking it up and out. It wasn't exactly like this, but and we saw what happened. It came within miles of hitting Florida, and it did make landfall in South Carolina and had devastating rainfall in North Carolina. So this is what it looks like on the 0Z run, and then just 6 hours later, the 6Z run, it shows this at the same time frame for the most part. Okay, so you see that the trough stays intact, that doesn't have that little lobe of energy breaking off, and Irma is much farther north overall if we compare the two. Okay, so these are the details. This is the 0Z, the 6Z. I'll say it's not much farther north, but it changes the outcome completely when you change the way the energy is. And you see the difference between 0 and 6Z with that trough there. One of them has the magnet closer to Irma and the other one doesn't, as you can see. So these are the things that we're going to be watching, and it's going to ebb and flow over time between a favorable hit pattern for the United States and a turn towards a way out, so to speak. And then you folks up in the Canadian Maritimes need to be watching this very closely as well. So in terms of any impacts, first of all, of course, the Lesser Antilles, and we're still a couple of days away from knowing about that. The one thing I can say for certain, you folks in the Lesser Antilles, get ready for some really big ocean swells headed your way. That's going to be mentioned eventually in the Hurricane Center's discussions. And from there, we'll try to figure out what, if any, direct impacts will take place. But for now, it's not forecast to move by the National Hurricane Center over the Lesser Antilles just yet, and it may never. And that would be obviously a good thing for that region. All right, so I'm just telling you what I know. There's no reason to speculate and play what if. We could do that, and this video would end up being an hour long, and you wouldn't have any more definitive answers than you did when you started. All right? So that is going to be it from me for today. I'm almost back home to North Carolina, 2/3 of the way there from my journey to Texas. Certainly appreciate everybody watching these video updates, tuning in to what I was doing at hurricanetrack.com, myself and the developers here that produce Hurricane Pro and Hurricane HD. Thank you as well for your support. It's been, hopefully we've been helpful. That's the bottom line. So I'll be back home in North Carolina tonight, and I'll have more video coverage for you over the weekend as we watch what happens with Irma. Have a great rest of your Friday, and I'll talk to you again beginning tomorrow.